Hey folks, welcome to the Houseplant Coach podcast. This is Veronica with Oh Happy Plants, and today I am indoors. I was gathering my orders that I have to go and fill, and and then I sat down with my computer because it started dumping rain out there, and I'm just like, because I also have plants to bring into the backyard because it's time to plant tomatoes. So I decided to come in, and then I decided to go onto the members site, which is members.ohhappyplants.online. If you're not familiar with that, it's totally free. And I decided to go in there and answer some questions. And so in answering my first question, naturally, welcome to and I think I've mentioned it, quite a few of my friends who are either diagnosed through peer review, which is apparently how a lot of autism is diagnosed, because all of your friends are autistic, and then they're like, yeah, dude, you too. So I have plenty of friends who are on the spectrum, and last spring, one of them suggested to me that maybe I was as well, and I was like, no. And then I was like, wait a minute. And it was one of those things, like the more you learn about how it feels, not just what it looks like to an observer when somebody is severely impacted by an environment that is not created for them. And, when the autism gets obvious because they're being negatively impacted by their environment, by this neurotypical world that has been built around us. That's what the diagnostic is based on. And it's not based on what it actually feels like. And the ADHD diagnostic is like, the questions are very slowly, gradually shifting into, here are the things that it feels like. Like, ADHD, apparently there's this big issue with like people who have problems with authority. And I'm like, no, it's not a problem with authority. It's a problem with make it make sense. You're asking me to do something? I want to fucking know why. That's not challenging authority. Authority doesn't get to, here's a rant. Authority doesn't get to have blind cooperation. Like, good leaders in the army don't even want that. They want people who think on their feet. And I think maybe it's the combination of ADHD and autism that makes me unable to put that down. Or at least it's very difficult for me to not need a reason. I want to understand why. Because if it makes more sense, then I'm more likely to do it, just simply because I'll remember. Anyway. Is it like logic-based action? Is that what's going on? And like, is neurotypical experience to just like act without logicking first? I'm making up words. Anyway, we're going to stop with that. But so, as one does when your brain is just completely off the rails with whatever divergence, undiagnosed or diagnosed, I go into this member site, I get to the first question, and then I'm just like, I have a better answer for this than, yes, it's a nutrient deficiency. So then I start digging, and then I realize that I don't actually have a podcast episode on interveinal chlorosis, and so here we are. So, then I fall down a freaking rabbit hole, and I'm looking at pictures, and I'm actually going to post this article that I found. And by article, I mean it's a training pamphlet from, who is this? Is it Washington State University? No, it's Montana State University. Why is it on the Mount Vernon Wazoo website? Whatever. Maybe it was posted on their website because it's good. So, solid information from Montana State University Extension Office, like the Ag Extension Office. Now, I was actually talking to my kid this morning about how how a person who wants to believe conspiracy theories will believe them, will be able to find evidence, will be able to, quote unquote, learn tongue-in-cheek use of the word, that what they want to believe is correct because they get to cherry pick data. So my kiddo right now is writing a, and this has a point, I promise. My kiddo is writing a persuasive essay, and he's so like, welcome to my brain when I was 13. Like, oh my God. They say you raise your children, like you raise yourself when you have kids. So many people are like, oh my God, I deserve this. And I'm just looking at him like at least as an adult, I know how to talk sense into him because we have these discussions. Nobody was talking to me about this shit when I was growing up because I don't think I really shared much about the assignments I was doing. I don't know why. I don't know why we didn't really have those conversations. We talked about other crap. Anyway, like with my parents and stuff. So anyway, my kid is telling me about this assignment he's doing. And it's this persuasive writing thing. And so he took, this morning we had a whole conversation while I was drinking my coffee about what cherry picking data means, basically. And so this kid took this whole list of pros and cons to violent video games, found the one pro, and decided to extrapolate that into an entire persuasive essay. And I think he's supposed to present the counter argument in some way. And he's like, yeah, I just made that part really small and I focused on the one pro. And I'm just like, what the fuck, kid? Like, seriously. And the reason, let me just say that he's not like a huge proponent of like really loves violent video games or anything like that. You know, he'll play whatever video game. We don't ban them in this house, but we also don't have a whole lot of that going on. And so, you know, like pretty normal kid, not super sheltered, not, you know, he's not like violent or anything like that. And he's just doing this to be sassy. And I'm just like, okay, child, because I think they were given a couple of options and this was one of the options. And he was like, oh, this looks hard to do. Let me see if I can do this. And he could have chosen to argue the anti-violent video game standpoint. He could have chosen to argue that, but that would be too easy. So instead of that, he took the challenge and he's like, let me persuade people that these are okay. So he's just being a big sass panda, which means that he just fits right in with myself and my dog and everybody else who knows me, pretty much. Bunch of sassers. And so he goes down this rabbit hole of proving with this one singular point from some study that they did that violent video games either aren't bad or there's some kind of positive to them. But basically that they don't increase violence. And I think that's been proven. They don't increase violent tendencies, but they, what's the word? Desensitize us, which is not necessarily a good thing. So anyway, that aside, whatever your viewpoints on that, we probably agree. But then we had this whole conversation about like the reason I do what I do is because a person can believe whatever they want to and can back it up with internet research, you know, no matter how wild the shit is. Like there are people out there who believe the earth is flat. Like, have they never been on an airplane? You can fucking see it. Like, have they never been to the ocean? You can see the curve. Anyways, that aside, I'm assuming we don't have flat earthers listening to a podcast that's so focused on science. But we have people in the plant community that think that putting a plant in a closet is a good idea. I mean, aside from like, I know forcing blooms and everything aside from that, but, anyways, don't starve your plants, please. I'll cry. And if the threat of me crying isn't good enough, then, I don't know what to do. Anyway, so we had this whole conversation about the value of knowing how to select good research. And then also our inherent urges to cherry pick data to support what we believe. And it's so funny because this kid, like I mentioned the study. So the reason I don't use perlite And I've mentioned this before in the podcast, I'm sure, like many times, but the whole reason I don't use perlite, it's not because I know for a fact that it's bad. It's because there's data to suggest that it is, and the only study that I could find that says it's not, and it can trap fluoride. That's the reason. And it can come with fluoride. Like, I don't know if every source comes with a ton of fluoride in it already, but if you don't flush it, it could have a lot of fluoride that could harm your plants. And then it could also trap additional fluoride from tap water. And so I'm just like, okay, well, I don't need to put that in potting soils, right? Like, there are other things that we can use instead of perlite. And I get that perlite is widely available, cheap, and really lightweight. So I get the reason that people want to use it. But I would prefer to figure out a workaround rather than include something that is likely to harm your plants. I'm not saying it absolutely will, but it's likely. So anyway, the only study that I found, and I'm telling my child this, and he's 13, so like he's my kid, and dad is smart too, and so he thinks on his feet. And so I'm telling him, yeah, the only study that I found that disproved all of the other data, and it was like, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 different studies about the fact that perlite contains fluoride or could trap fluoride. And then the one that disproved that, quote unquote, was funded by and promoted by perlite.org. That's the only place I can find that study online, is on perlite.org. And I looked at Silas, and as soon as I said that, I could tell that he frickin' understood. He's like, oh, well, don't trust them. And I'm like, yeah, right? Like, you got to follow the money. And if perlite.org has any kind of like, and you know that they have vested interest, like financial interest in perlite being used, it is perlite.org, right? Like, we're not dumb here. So if my kid can put this together, then like, this is the reason that I'm challenging everyone out there to get their information from good sources. So instead of searching for yellowing leaves and saying, I'm sorry, this rant is going on too long, and looking at, articles from, whatever staff writer is on at the Spruce or the Sill or any of those big publications that put out a bunch of information. Now, there are blogs out there that actually do solid research. My buddy Raphael over at Ohio Tropics is one that does good, like, he puts out good information. A lot of his information is from personal experience. I can't words right now. And a lot is from actual proper research. And he's one of those types who's a big old nerd. And this is why I love him. And so I trust what he puts out there. Like, he has had a couple of things that I maybe disagree with, but he's not just spouting off the same information as is on, the top 6 blogs that are written by some staff writer or AI, but they may be just written by a person who's had houseplants for 6 months. And what they do is they Google some popular topic and they write an article about it. And their research is the other 6 blogs that were the top Google results about that same topic. And so it's just an echo chamber. Person A at company whatever writes an article based on person B at this other company who's in their same shoes. Maybe they've had houseplants for 2 years, but it's like plants in their apartment. No, it's not like they've worked with thousands of plants. That's not who we're having writing these articles here. It's either AI, which is just pulling, false data. It's not data when it comes from people's opinions. It's data when it comes from studies. And so I just, like, this is my whole, like, get your information from proper sources. So anyway, this is from, what was it, Montana State University? Yeah. And it's about, I'm going to put a disclaimer in this. This is about nutrient deficiencies. And it's about intervenal chlorosis. And I'm going to post this on the website, the members.ohappyplants.online. It's the Oh Happy Plants membership community. And it's like the complement to this podcast in that most of the people on there know about the podcast, have listened to it, prefer to get good information about plants instead of popular information. Like the term overwatering, that nobody seems to know what it means. Like some people think that it means you gave the plant too much water, but that's not really what's going on most of the time. And I've ranted about that enough, so I won't. But like, it's just these like buzzwords that go around, and I hear people in plant shops, like the people working in the plant shop will say, "Oh yeah, overwatering is the worst way to kill a plant. It's probably the thing that most people do." And it's like, someone said that once, and everyone latched on and started saying that as their best advice. And nobody's questioning it. And nobody's realizing that it's way more complex than simply saying, there is too much water in this dirt. This dirt is too wet. It's way more complex. And I'm not going to go into it because, again, it's too complex to just explain in a, 30-second blurb when we're trying to talk about something else and really bad at staying on topic. But still, buzzwords, they don't deserve our attention, except to pick them apart. It's getting sunny outside. I need to get working on this. The dog is also snoring. He is so freaking cute. I love this animal. Anyway, okay, so the disclaimer will be like, hey, skip ahead to minute 16. Okay, so we have a bunch of different information. So first, intervenal chlorosis is when a plant has yellowing between the veins and the veins are still green. Veinal chlorosis is when the veins go yellow and the leaf is still green. And that is, I think the most that I've seen it is when there's some kind of injury to the plant. Like it's going to be something like an injury to the plant's vascular system. And if that's happening, then like, I don't want to just say you're fucked, but you might be fucked. So like, it could be something like over application. Drumstick, watch your head. Oh, he's stretching and he shoved my computer off my lap a little bit. No, don't do that, baby. Thank you. So anyway, over application of a pesticide or like an herbicide or something like that. Actually, I think that's probably what herbicides do, because they get sucked into the plant roots and then they kill the plant. I don't think I own any herbicides. I bet you could try this out if you took some vinegar and went outside and poured it on a dandelion or something. Don't do it with dandelions though, because they're nice. Do it on cat's ear. Cat's ear is the thing that looks like a dandelion with fuzzy leaves, but the leaves are mostly like pressed against the ground and it kills the grass around it, and it's a real bitch and I don't like it. It's like my nemesis in this climate. Yeah, so you'd probably see veinal chlorosis in that sense, because if the plant is pulling in a poison, like some kind of toxin into its vascular system to distribute to the leaves as if it's water, then everything that vinegar touches, and no, don't use Roundup, but if we're using something like more friendly, like vinegar, then everything that vinegar touches is going to die, and the things that are going to die last are the things that it gets to last. So it's going to go through the vascular system, kill off the veins, and then go into the rest of the plant. And there is some discussion in here about veinal chlorosis possibly occurring. And again, this is when the veins go yellow. This is less common than intervenal chlorosis from what I've seen with houseplants, because usually we're not dumping a ton of like herbicides on our houseplants because we don't want to kill them. Details, right? So where was I going? God damn it. I lost my train. The train is like, what I always tell people is it's like there's a freight train, but I'm attached to the front of it by a bungee cord. So I'm like pinging off in all these different directions. Like, those little games where you have a paddle with a ball attached with a little elastic? And that's me on the front of the train. So the train is still going the direction, which is intervenal chlorosis and nutrient deficiency. But I'm just all over the fucking place, like pinging around on a rubber band. Yeah. So you probably, the venal chlorosis thing. What they were talking about, here's the train back on the tracks. What they were talking about in here earlier in this article was that venal chlorosis, it can be caused by a bunch of different things, but one of the potential things could be a nutrient deficiency that's so severe that the production of chlorophyll has been impacted, and if the plant is not producing chlorophyll, then whatever chlorophyll exists already in the leaves is going to be there still, but there won't be more coming through, basically. And I think it must exist for whatever period of time and then degrade or something and be recycled. Did you know that chlorophyll, I think, maybe I read that it was the most recycled compound on Earth. Maybe I just read that it was a massive, ridiculous amount that's recycled. I think that would, your definition of what recycling consists of would be, because I guess water vapor being rained down, is that recycling? I don't know. Anyway, stuff evaporating and then rain coming, and then that whole process is probably more billions of tons than chlorophyll, but it's something like 100 billion tons of chlorophyll is recycled annually, and just by the leaves turn red in the winter, the chlorophyll is broken down and taken back into the plant and saved. I mean, it's not like saved as chlorophyll, but it's broken down into its constituent elements and reused. And isn't that fucking cool? So anyway, aside from all of that, moving on. It's like 100 billion tons. It's preposterous. Like, it's this huge amount. And I never knew, when I was looking at like trees turning colors, I never knew until a couple years ago that that's actually what's happening, is they're recycling shit. Like, I figured it was something like that, and when I was a kid, I was just like, oh, it's pretty, but my ex and I, it wasn't even when Silas hadn't even been born yet. Ethan was easier to lie to. He wasn't raised by me. So Silas's older brother is, God, he's 16 now. It's insane. But he was my first stepkid. And when he was really little, we made up this story. He was asking how the leaves got off the trees. And we were like, oh, there are spiders up there with tiny little leaf blowers. And I think he believed it for a while. I'm pretty sure. And he was like, 2 or 3 when we told him that. Maybe 3. Silas at age 3 was like hyper verbal. And he also I had been telling him funny little lies, joking with him. For so long, since he was able to understand things, I'd been goofing off with him, that by the time he was God, I think 2.5, maybe 3, I would say something that was kind of off the wall, but stated as fact. And then I just kind of look at him and he'd look at me and just kind of narrow his eyes and be like, no, just not believe me, because I'd been telling him nonsense for so long. And he would give me this kind of side eye, he was trying to figure out, because I would tell him stuff that was ridiculous and true enough of the time that he wasn't quite sure if the preposterous things that came out of my mouth were true or not, because I was joking around half the time too, because you got to keep them on your toes, on their toes, right? Because 3-year-olds are enough to handle. So if you keep them a little off balance, it wasn't abusive, I promise. So we were joking around all the time. And so he figured out that he would look at me and I would crack a tiny grin or something if I was waiting for him to figure it out. And then he'd just be like, no, I don't believe you. And then once in a while I would do it and it would be true. And I'd be like, no, really, we can look it up. So where was I going with that? Oh yeah, leaf blowers. So we were talking about back then, we were talking this, 15 years ago, talking about writing a book about tiny little spiders that have leaf blowers up in the trees that blow all the leaves off in the fall. So if anybody wants to take that idea and write that book, tell me so I can buy a copy, because it sounds really fucking cute. And I don't have follow through for shit like that. So anyway, back on topic. Damn it. Christ. Okay. Intervenal chlorosis. So this came about from a person posting, and I shall not mention names because I didn't ask, but a person posted a picture of a Cebu blue pothos, and it has intervenal chlorosis. And I think it's a plant that they got from someone. I don't really see the story. Yes, got it from someone. It had been in water, and it very clearly has that. And now Cebus sometimes have that, like the look of their veins are a little bit darker than the surrounding tissue, but the surrounding tissue shouldn't have a yellowish cast. It should still have that greeny blue sort of tint to it. It shouldn't have a yellowish cast to it. So these specifically are what are concerning me, the yellowish tint between the leaves. And so I'm just going to go through the different, because they put this together well, and my brain is kind of insane. So the first point here that this article has, and again, I'm going to post this whole thing with this podcast episode, so their first point is that a lot of different deficiencies can look kind of similar, and sometimes you're like intervenal chlorosis is intervenal chlorosis, right? Just like a stunted leaf is a stunted leaf, even though they can come from different, typically leaves are stunted, like the new growth is going to be stunted as if it's a lack of calcium, but sometimes it can be other things too. Okay, slow down, brain, focus. And so if you have their example is that nitrogen and sulfur deficiencies can be really alike, but depend on the placement of the chlorotic leaf on the plant. And I don't see any specifics here, but I think I did another. Let me pause this and look really fast so I can give you some examples of this. Because so if you have a chlorotic leaf with this intervenal nonsense going on the lowest part of the plant, it means one thing, or it points to one set of nutrient deficiencies. And if you have it on the very new growth, then it points to a different set. And the reason for this is because some nutrients are mobile and some are immobile. And what that means is when the nutrient is taken up by the roots and is pushed out into the leaf to do to help with whatever cellular processes that it does, or build whatever piece of the structure that it goes into, that nutrient may be stuck there. So if it's pushed into a new leaf, and then that leaf is slowly overtaken by more and more new growth, and then it gets a nutrient deficiency, sometimes that nutrient, I forget what it is. Nitrogen is not one of them. I forget the specific nutrients, but sometimes whatever that is can just stay in that leaf, which means that leaf is going to stay green and your new growth is going to come in chlorotic. And sometimes it's a mobile nutrient. So if it's mobile, it's going to be pulled from the oldest growth, which is going to be the least biologically useful growth. It's going to be pulled from that and used to create the new leaves. So the new leaves will come in happy, but then the older leaves start going chlorotic. And nitrogen deficiency is one of those. I want to say iron is also one where the iron is mobile. I'm trying to look. Let me just go down and I can try to find that information, because I used to know these things, but all of the things push out other information, and also my brain just kind of had a fit over the past couple years. So I'm going to look this up and I'll be right back. Here we go. I found it. So mobile nutrients include nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, chloride, magnesium, and molybdenum. Let's see, immobile nutrients. Sorry, I just had to look something up. It's chlorine, not chloride. So immobile nutrients are, that's boron, calcium, copper, iron. Iron, manganese, nickel, sulfur, and zinc. And I'm going to put together a graphic explaining this at some point, so you don't have to memorize it. I'm going to put together something easy that I'll put up on the member site, because this is important shit. And, this is interesting. It's saying that zinc is a partial exception because it's somewhat immobile in the plant. So apparently zinc deficiency symptoms can initially appear on middle leaves and then affect both older and younger leaves as the deficiency develops. So a deficiency developing means that you're continuing to not fertilize your plant. So once again, fertilize your damn house plants. They cannot live in whatever soil you've been keeping them in forever, and I am just as guilty. So this is not shame. This is as much me talking to myself as anything else. In terms of not repotting very frequently, one thing that is super, super easy to do is to use a liquid fertilizer. Another thing that's super easy to do is to use some kind of a top dressing or something like that. And if you're using something to top dress soils, I would not use a slow release chemical fertilizer to do this. I would only ever mix those in. But if you're using something natural to top dress or something, what you can do is you can water your root ball. So it's totally wet all over, and then pop it out of the pot. And as long as it's not in need of repotting, if it's a total mat of roots around the outside, then probably just repot the damn thing, take pity, right? But if it is mostly soil still and the roots haven't thoroughly colonized, if they're not super aggressive, then what you can do is take that wet root ball and just kind of sprinkle on that top dressing. And again, you don't want to sprinkle on a really concentrated amount of a chemical fertilizer, even if it says it's slow release, because if it's really concentrated and up against roots on the outside and there's a ton of it, then it can cause burning. But if you're using something natural, you can do that. And so if you just sprinkle it on and make it stick to the outside of the root ball, then shove it back in the pot, then look, you just put the fertilizer where the where the roots are, and you're all set. And sometimes you might want to do that if there's not enough soil that's loose on the top, if the roots have kind of colonized around the top too, then you may want to do the pop out of the thing method. That's what we're going to call it. Very descriptive. But if they've, honestly, if your roots are just totally clumping up in the top, they're probably also clumped up throughout the whole thing, and it may need an upsize in the pot. I have a fiddle leaf fig to repot, and its roots are insane like that. And it's a massive plant. And it's also, last summer it was outside for too long because with the move and with the grief and with the everything. So I'm going to be doing a major overhaul on this tree, and it's going to live outside all summer. And I think that's going to start as soon as the weather warms at night. I think it's going to be 41 degrees either tonight or tomorrow night. And then it's going to warm up, and it should be at least above 40 until probably October, maybe, hopefully. I don't think it'll get super cold again, right? I mean, it's May already, right? So anyway, it's time for plants to move outside. That's what I'm trying to say. And so I'll be doing a video on that. Watch for more videos to pop up, hopefully in the near future, if I can get my shit together here. The shit is getting together. It's slowly coming together. Look, I'm recording a science-y podcast. It's science-ish, let's call it, because I am seriously all over the place. Maybe too much coffee today. Maybe not enough exercise to mellow me out. though we did already do the word that I shall not say for about 1.5 miles this morning, but still that doesn't really count. Okay. It says there's a key. I want you all to go and look at this and look at this article that I'm posting in the member site. And again, it's totally free. Like there's not, I mean, a lot of people don't want to download yet another freaking thing. And for me to have my own branded app, like some people forget what the Mighty Networks thing is for on their phone if they download it. I don't know if you can rename an app on your phone, like if you can change the name, but maybe you could put it in a folder that's for plant shit. Like if you have, if you have Google Lens on your phone, stick it in that folder and name it plant shit, and then you'll know that it's plant shit. Because that's how we talk about stuff. Okay. All right. I actually, okay, I'm going to go through some of these things, and I'm going to go through some of the different minerals. And I'm actually just going to read you this flow chart here. But really, I want you to go and look at this. So I will post it in an obvious sort of fashion. And I'll also, I think I can go in and put it in the, I'll put it somewhere in the Learn About Plants section. Because, I'll put it in the notes for this podcast. Because, I'm not doing a good job at explaining this because, I haven't sat down with this and written out a script, and it's that sort of stuff where I would need to. But they already wrote this whole thing up, so really I just want you to get access to the good information. So, the flow chart. So here we are, mobile nutrients. When I say older leaves, it means lower leaves. This says older or lower leaves affected. If you look at your plant, find the growth tip, which is where the new leaves are coming out. That's your new growth. The furthest on that same stalk, the furthest away from that growth tip is your old growth. So with calatheas, or if you want to call them Gopertias, if you want to bow to the scientific community renaming shit, with those, they are probably coming from the center of the individual bundle of leaves, the individual little clump. The center one is going to be the newest. The most external one is the oldest. With this ginger plant that I see right here, it's the very tip where the leaves are unfurling. Those are the newest. And at the very bottom of each individual stalk, that's the oldest leaf. With this ficus tree right next door to that, I'm just going around my house. The leaves that are the very closest to the ground are going to be the oldest leaves. So on each individual branch, again, the leaves that are closest to the very bottom are going to be the oldest leaves. And if it has, a ficus will have new growth on each branch at the same time, so it's not necessarily physical distance to the ground, but along each stem, the older ones are going to be further down that branch. I'm looking for anybody around here. I mean, with a vining plant, it's the same sort of thing. Assume branch means vine. Assume branch means stem. And go to the closest one to the soil. That's your oldest leaf. And your newest leaf is the one all the way out at the very end. If it branches, then the newest leaf is kind of variable, but you know where your growth points are, right? It's where the new growth is going to come from. So anyway, with mobile nutrients, if the older or lower leaves are affected, and the effects are generalized, all of the lower leaves are a different color. Let me see. Oh, interesting. And then if the plants are dark green or developing purple or red, i.e. making anthocyanins, then it could be a phosphorus deficiency. If they're not doing that, and they're lighter green, with leaves light green or yellow, no necrotic spotting. So necrotic spotting is going to be little dead patches all over the leaf. They're going to look, dead, like brown and crunchy. If there's no necrotic spotting and it's overall lighter green on the lower leaves, and there's not interveinal chlorosis, or maybe a little bit, then it's going to be a nitrogen deficiency. If sorry, I keep having an alarm going off. If the plants are neither dark green / purpley red or light green / yellowy with no necrotic spotting, if they're light green but they have necrotic spotting, and the pale leaves are sometimes scorched, cupped, or rolled, and I have seen this on a bunch of plants outside more often than inside. But if it's that, then it's molybdenum. molybdenum. That's why it's hard to pronounce, is because how do you pronounce LYBD? Like, who invented that shit? Molybdenum deficiency. And then over here, if the older or lower leaves are not the ones that are affected, then you want to move on to immobile nutrients. And then, again, I'm just going to read through this because I know a lot of you people are auditory learners and you would rather listen to this while you drive or work or something like that. So we're going to go back to older or lower leaves being affected still with mobile nutrients. So if the effects are not generalized, if they are localized, i.e. one leaf has this going on or a few leaves, and then the chlorosis is interveinal, the leaves sometimes red or with dead spots, then it's probably magnesium. If it doesn't have the red and dead spots, and there's no interveinal chlorosis, oh, that's interesting. Chlorotic areas with a burning of leaf margins, spotting sometimes along leaf margins. I'm trying to think of when I've seen this. Probably mostly calatheas. It says that that's a potassium deficiency. The burning of leaf margins is kind of like a discoloration and then browning just in the leaf margins, and that's potassium deficiency. And then if that's not the symptom, if there is no interveinal chlorosis and there's distinct chlorotic, which means yellowy, and necrotic lesions, which is spotting, with an abrupt boundary between dead and live tissue, this means there's no yellow edge, which would indicate a fungal infection, then it's a chloride deficiency. I was right. Chloride is Cl. The internet told me it was chlorine, but it's chloride. Sometimes I should trust my brain. So chloride deficiencies I've seen on monsteras. Let's see. Can I see any here? Not really. Trying to think who else I've seen them on. Probably monsteras and sometimes ficuses. I don't know that many, maybe philodendrons, like other, like, philodendron narrow, like the Rojo Congo, stuff like that. I think I've seen them on those plants. I'm trying to name some plants where I've seen these types of things. I gotta just find you guys pictures of all this shit. That's really what we need. This doesn't help very much. Reading through this shit. I don't know, maybe it does. So anyway, onward to immobile nutrients. So if the newer / younger leaves are affected, and the symptoms are pretty localized, like it's not the entire plant. If it's the entire plant that has like curling leaves, you might want to look for spider mites or something like that. If it's just the new growth, then you want to look at nutrient deficiency or aphids. Aphids prefer new growth. They like the baby leaves. They're little assholes. Okay, so if the growing point, the terminal bud, which is the very tippy bit of the plant that's trying to grow, if that dies, and then the young leaves of the terminal bud become light green at the base, they become twisted and brittle and die back at growing point, and the chlorosis is on the young leaves, that's a boron deficiency. If that's not the case, and the young leaves are hooked at first, and then they finally turn brown and die back, then it's a calcium deficiency. Oh, interesting. Apparently nickel was only recently added as an essential nutrient. I wonder when that happened. When did we find that out? Nickel can actually cause that edge browning also, and tip browning. So tipping is when the brown, when the very tip of the leaf goes brown, and tipping can be caused by a nickel deficiency, but it's because nickel is necessary for the use of nitrogen. And if the plant can't use the nitrogen, then sometimes it'll be pushed out to the tip of the leaf in the form of nitrate and will cause tip death because it just sits there and isn't actually used by the leaf. So the tip of the leaf dies because of nitrate toxicity. And the whole purpose of, well, not the whole purpose of nickel, but like the issue there with this tip death, what they call tipping in the plant world, the issue sometimes is drought, and then other times can just be a nickel deficiency because that nitrate buildup causes that death, and without nickel, it can't use that nitrogen. Okay, going back all the way up to the top of the flow chart. If the growth point does not die and it remains alive, and you're seeing yellowing with no interveinal chlorosis, and the way it phrases this, chlorosis without interveinal chlorosis, and it's like, if you're seeing, so let's just call it full-on leaf yellowing. Let's not do it weird, guys. Like, communication's important. This was written by nerds, I can tell. I love nerds, and also make the words make sense to normal people, please. So if the young leaves are light green, there's no chlorotic spotting or striping, then it's a sulfur deficiency. If the young leaves are chlorotic, i.e. light green or yellow, and the tips appear withered and will eventually die, then that's copper. If the young leaves have interveinal chlorosis, and there's a sharp distinction between veins and chlorotic areas, which means it's just like the veins really stand out. The veins are very green, and the chlorotic, the yellow areas are very yellow. It's an iron deficiency. If there's not a sharp distinction between the veins and chlorotic areas, and it's kind of spotty looking, then it's manganese. And if... Wait. Oh, if the middle leaves have interveinal chlorosis and stunted growth, then it's zinc. That doesn't really make sense. I want to know what the fuck is going on there. Because if it's a semi-mobile nutrient, is it that it's immobile in the older leaves, and then the very newest growth pulls it from, like, you know, like the babies pull the food out of the teenagers' mouths, but the adults have all they need, sort of thing? Does that make sense to your brain? I'm thinking about the oldest leaves have the zinc on lockdown, so it's stuck there. But then the almost new growth, the next level up, the teenager leaves, have slightly mobile zinc still. Maybe they haven't locked it down very well. So then the baby leaves can steal from the middle leaves. I wonder if that's what's happening. That's the only thing that makes sense to my brain, but also I made that up, so let's not read into that. Let me just go ahead and read through here and see if that's the answer, because I'm really curious now. I'm going to scroll all the way down to zinc. There's iron. Okay. It is not telling me zinc. Huh. Oh, here it is. Growth hormone production. Particularly important for internode elongation. Interesting. So internode elongation is when there's space between the nodes. It's how a plant gets taller and not as bushy. Internode elongation to a bad degree is etiolation, which is when, when a succulent that used to be a cute little rosette starts stretching for the light. That's elongation of the internodes, the space between the nodes where the leaves are attached, gets really stretched out because it's just like starving. So that can be a bad thing, but if you don't have enough of it, then a tree can't grow up and it just stays like really shrubby. So it's necessary. Severe zinc deficiencies cause leaves to turn grayish white and fall prematurely or die. That's really interesting. So zinc deficient plants generally exhibit severe stunting. It does not say anything about why it's halfway mobile. I'm disappointed. Okay, anyway, I'm going to be done with this. So suffice it to say that there's a lot of complicated shit going on with nutrients, just like inside of our bodies. Some plants are going to be more susceptible to not only to nutrient deficiency, but really some plants are going to show it more than other plants. Some plants are more sensitive. So a plant that, spathiphyllums seem to be very sensitive to a deficiency in nickel. They're also very sensitive to getting dried out, but typically when a plant dries out, when a spath dries out, it will droop like crazy, so you'll freaking know it if it's drought that's affecting it. Another thing that can happen with them, what is it? I think it's a potassium deficiency that causes the stomata to not be able to close, and so the plant looks like forever wilted. And so, like, you water a spathiphyllum and it doesn't perk up again. This could just be a potassium deficiency because what's happening is the plant is pulling the water up and using the water, but it can't shut its tiny little mouths, and so all the water vapor is just escaping. So essentially it can't shut itself down to fluff itself up again. It's like if you have a bouncy house, I'm using that analogy again, sorry for people who have heard it 1,000 times from me. If you have a bouncy house with a big blower on one side, and then you stick a knife in the top 1,000 times, if you don't patch those holes, then the damn thing's never going to fill up. And if you think about a leaf cell, if it's half deflated, that's what causes wilt. So what puffs it up but water, moisture. And so if you can't actually fill it because there's essentially a hole in the other side, if the moisture can't stay trapped inside that leaf, then it's just going to continuously be wilted. And so that's why nutrients are important. Another reason is because without certain nutrients, then the cellular functions can't happen, and potentially maybe the stomata can't close, and that means your plant is just going to be in this forever wilt sort of state and be sad all the time, and then it'll make you sad. And so fertilizer is actually for your mental health. That's the takeaway from this episode. Oh, this is good. This is why I let myself ramble, because this is some good shit right here. The fertilizer that you use is for your own mental health. I'm going to write that on my fertilizer bottle so I use it regularly, even though I do for the most part. But I think I mentioned in one of the recent episodes that what I do is I leave my liquid fertilizer or whatever. Like, I'm experimenting with a new powder thing right now, and I leave it on the counter, and the liquid I leave in a little squeezy bottle. The powder, I need to figure out. I think I need one of those little desiccant packets that they put in shoes, because it turns into kind of a hard rock, and I have to like scrape at it to use it. This other powder stuff, but anyway, I'll figure that out later. So I leave it on my counter by my sink where I fill my watering cans. And I'm not a fan of clutter. Let me just say that first. And also, if I were to keep my watering can under the sink where the fertilizer is, then yes, I would grab it. But I don't. I keep my watering can on the counter, hopefully with water in it, because then I can just grab that fucker and water something if I notice it's dry. Like the ADHD tells me, hey, the more steps that are in the way of you finishing the project, like if it takes going and getting the fertilizer out of a cupboard in my laundry room, carrying it into the kitchen, filling a watering can, using the fertilizer, putting everything away, and then watering a plant, versus there's fucking water in the watering can on the counter. I can grab it and water my plant. One of those things is going to get done. The other one might mean the plant stays thirsty. So like, know yourself. This is why I tell everybody don't water on a schedule for the plants, but definitely set a schedule for yourself to check your plants and see if they need water, because we are human. And if we don't have habits, especially those of us with crazy brain syndrome, if we don't have regular habits, then we're probably going to forget shit. And then also, the other thing is make it freaking easy for yourself. So the liquid I put in a ketchup squeeze bottle, I know how many drops are sufficient for my little tiny watering can. And also for my bigger one, because I got myself a bigger one because the little one was stupid for big plants. Because, like, how many times do you want to fill the damn thing to water a single pot? Not more than once. Not even a whole time, honestly. So yeah, make it easy for yourself and fertilize for your own mental health, because a lack of fertilizer is going to impact you as much as the plant, because you're going to be sitting there driving yourself crazy about like, what the hell is wrong with this? Or like, I mean, you know what a new leaf does to your psyche. You squeak about it. My son knows what it sounds like when I find a new leaf. It's a specific squeak. And when he was littler, he would come and see. And it was pretty fun. And if you see more of those, you're going to have more dopamine, right? And if you see fewer, it's, you know, you're not going to be quite as happy as you could be. So fertilize. It's good for you. And also your plants will say thank you. Okay, I'm going to be done blathering on at you. I really hope this helped at least a little bit. I think that the thing that's going to help the most is this. How many pages is this? 16-page document. So I'll post this, and then I'm going to do more research on all of this, because some of these, so the other pieces, I've seen a lot of different information. This seems like the most holistic, the most well-researched, and the most like, you know, well put together in terms of, here, learn these things. It seems like the best one I've come across so far. But I have come across a bunch of different articles from reputable sources asserting different causes for specific things. And I know that sometimes, like if the pictures they show you are different about the same deficiency, sometimes it's because deficiencies present differently in different plants. Other times it might be slightly misdiagnosed, or it might be more than one thing is going on at the same time. Like maybe a plant is deficient in two or three or even more nutrients or micronutrients. And so it's important to keep that in mind if you're diagnosing your own plant. If you haven't been fertilizing at all, then probably just start fertilizing with a complete fertilizer. Because assuming that it's, you know, you see one thing on the plant and you're going to assume that it's, oh, this is the only cause, then maybe it has, you know, additional, like if you start fertilizing with like a high nitrogen fertilizer because you see a nitrogen deficiency, which I don't know if I don't think that's what was going on with this CB Blue, but I would have to go back through this because it just had the interveinal chlorosis, and I couldn't tell if it was the oldest leaves. It kind of looks like the oldest leaves, but I can't tell. It's kind of a jumble of plant. So if you notice one deficiency, and then like say there's a nitrogen deficiency here, but you haven't been fertilizing at all, then likely there's not going to be a ton of nickel there. So you're going to start fertilizing with more nitrogen, and then eventually it might build up to the point that it can't use it, so it starts exhibiting nitrogen toxicity because there's no nickel. So just pay attention to, you know, more than just, I need to fix this individual little deficiency. Pay attention to, I need to treat this plant like it is a whole system that needs everything instead of just one thing or another thing. And also, if you have been fertilizing with, like, something that's really high nitrogen, or like, gosh, I actually just ran into, I forget where, but I have another affiliate who writes a plant blog, and he recommended Liquid Dirt, and Liquid Dirt recently finally put out their NPK ratio, which is just like a sticker on the back of the package. And it wasn't super recent. I think it was before Sean died. So like, welcome to the last year and a half of my life of kind of, it's like, when you turn a page and there's two pages stuck together, and you finish reading one page and you turn the page, and it just like how the sentence finished on that next page just doesn't make sense. And you're like, what the fuck? It feels like there's like a chapter that's been cut out of the middle of my book sometimes, like in terms of how I think about stuff. It feels like I just bought a container of Liquid Dirt and noticed that it had this NPK on the back, but it was more than a year and a half ago. It might have been 2 years ago. I don't know. So anyway, time went all wobbly in my brain. But yeah, they have on the back, they have the NPK ratio, and it's something like 13 times as much potassium as nitrogen and phosphorus. That is so unbalanced for houseplants. And for any plant. Potassium is not the only thing we need to be giving our plants. And like, there are micronutrients in there too, but everything except potassium is so little that if you only feed this, then you have way too much potassium, or maybe the correct amount, but not anything else. And I'm just like, okay, so this is not the thing to do. And it just, it looks like they took a bunch of soluble kelp extract and maybe mixed in a few other things, but it doesn't look like they sent their product to a lab to test it with the idea that they need to have a balanced fertilizer, which to me is kind of disappointing because their packaging is cool and the product seems cool and it seems like a good idea and blah, blah, blah. But it's just, it's another case of know what you're putting on your plants, I guess, and know the source too, know if somebody, like, I don't know those folks individually. And so I can't attest to how much they care about customers and products and stuff like that. I do know what it's like to start a company and not be able to label things because the registration fees are exorbitant and you have to pay them per state, per product, per size of bag, per year. So even for one product, it'd be a lot annually. So I get it. And also, if we're going to be selling people stuff, I think we need to be a little more thorough. If a person is going to call themselves an expert, I think they need to be a little more thorough about their own research and product development in terms of what they put into things. And this is not me product bashing. This is just, use Liquid Dirt if you want a potassium boost, but also, just be aware that that's what it's doing, because plants need potassium. They really do. But there are also plenty of other things you can add to that mix to make it more full spectrum. So anyway, to finish that actual thought, the thing that was actually trying to come out is just basically focus on a really complete blend instead of just trying to correct one single deficiency. Like, you don't need to go out and buy individual containers of all of these nutrients. Just make sure that your plants are getting like the full spectrum, whether that's from your soil or from a liquid fertilizer or whatever, just because otherwise you're going to run into things. And then if you do start seeing issues, go ahead and, if you look at your fertilizer and you notice, if you've been using something like Liquid Dirt that's unbalanced, or something that only has NPK and in weird quantities, like there's one that's a 20-20-20, And that's not very good for houseplants because most of our plants are foliage plants, so they need a higher percentage of nitrogen. They're not a fruiting plant. They're not necessarily here to bloom for us. They're here to produce leaves and be gorgeous and lush and fabulous. And so just like if you run into issues, if you start noticing problems, then take a look at those problems, take a look at this flow chart that I'm going to post in the member site and see if you can adjust something. But it may just mean changing your fertilizer regimen if you're noticing a specific type of problem. Anyway, I have been talking long enough. My throat is getting really dry and kind of sore. I need to drink something. And this is already over an hour. So I'm going to go ahead and post this. And I hope this helps at least to expose you. Like, the point of this podcast is not to be super sciencey. I mean, even though I get into it, the point of it is to show you like, hey, science isn't fucking scary, and a lot of people already know that. And there are people who might, given the pretty article from the SIL that talks about whatever they're talking about, one specific nutrient deficiency or fertilization or something, in a really elementary, anybody can understand it sort of way, versus this this publication from the University of Montana. Most people choose the easy thing to read. And I don't want you all to get bad information. I want everybody to get good information. And often that comes with a mental cost in terms of the calories it takes our brain to process this whole article. So if you are going to this and you want the easy shit, scroll down to page 6. You have the flow chart. Pages 6 and 7 will guide you through that. I will do some more research eventually. I can't promise this soon because I'm in the middle of 80,000 projects, and I also just bought tomatoes today. So it's time, but my God, did I need another thing to do? And I have no chill at the garden center. So there's also other plants in my truck right now. Yeah. So if you want the easy way through, just read page 6 and 7 if you think you have a nutrient deficiency. The next thing to remember is, now that you've read all of this, everything is going to look like a nutrient deficiency, and that's not necessarily the case. Like right now, I can see probably 12 different things that could be, read into as nutrient deficiencies, but over there, that was an aphid infestation. That's what caused that issue. Over there, that plant dried out too much. That's what caused that issue. Over here was a different thing, So like that over there is extra floral nectaries. Even though it's little dead spots, it's not a nutrient deficiency. And there's a lot of different causes of things. That dead leaf on my begonia, that's because the poor thing dried out. So there can be a lot of causes. And I'm not trying to make everything look like, I don't want to oversimplify everything into nutrient deficiency. So let's not do that. But this is good information. So take a look. And I really hope this wasn't just too confusing and freaking roundabout nonsense, brain. Sorry. I hope it was at least amusing. But yeah, the point is to make this, if I can read it and understand it with my crazy ass brain, then you can too. And again, pages 6 and 7, I will post this on the member site. If you're not over there, it's totally free to sign up. I don't think I'm ever going to charge. I started with charging for the membership, and I think it was $6 a month or something like that. But I don't think I'm ever going to charge for just the main member site. I don't think I want to do that because it's going to be like right now, there is a section for tutorial videos. I think Mighty Networks dumped them all when they revamped the site, and I really hope they never do that again because it was really stupid. But the Houseplant Coach podcast has a searchable repository on there. So most times that I find, if I go to any podcast player and I search the Houseplant Coach podcast and then like keywords from the episode, it's not going to pull anything up. But on the membership site, you can go there and you can search the podcast page where I have uploaded most of the episodes. You can search that page for keywords and it'll pull up, like if you're curious about watering or if you're curious about leaf yellowing, it'll pull up all of the relevant podcast episodes. So you can say, oh, well, here's one. Or if you want to grow prayer plants or begonias or something like that, if you want to see if there's any information that I've put out in the podcast on that topic, then you can search for that. So joining the member site, like that's why I want it free, is because I want all this information really easy to access. And eventually I'm going to be offering courses, but they're going to be separate. So go ahead and join that if you want access to all of this nonsense. And also, I don't know if I announced, I think I may have said, I am going to start doing live Q&As in the member site. And obviously there are going to be questions that I can't just answer out of my brain. But what I'm going to do, how I'm going to run that is I'm going to post at least 24 hours in advance that, hey, I'm doing a live Q&A on this day at this time. It'll always be PST if I forget that. If you do not have it set up on that site to allow me to email you directly, I don't spam. I might send out a couple of emails a month. Like if I make a post on there, I might say, yes, push this to everyone. And so then it'll just send you an email notifying you that I made a post. And it's not going to be a daily thing at all. Trust me, I'm not I'm not that with it. So if you want notification, I will be pushing notifications like that to people for the live Q&As. So if you want to be notified of those in advance, go ahead and turn on that notification. I think it calls me a host on there. I think that's the terminology they use. So make sure you go into your notifications and click the allow button for messages from the host, in terms of it emailing you directly when I post something. So I will be doing that. And then within the comments on the post that I make, because I'll write up a little article and it'll push it out to you through your email. Then if you navigate to the network and you comment with pictures or with your questions, please include pictures if it's something that's visual, because that'll give me a lot more information. If you include information about your watering and, what you've tried, what you think it might be, then I can try to help in real time solve your plant care issues. And I'm doing this because it'll add to the, the publicly available repository of information on there. Also because it's community engagement, which I've been notoriously bad at. And then also because I can schedule it on my time. And I have stopped doing individual consultation, which I was doing for about a year and a half. And I'm just not going to be doing that anymore because, number one, I don't like being paid hourly for things anymore. I just don't really do that. There's no way to scale that unless I were to record what I tell somebody and their questions, but that requires too many consent forms and I'm just not about that life. And I don't want y'all to feel like you can't book a consult with me because your house is going to be on display or whatever, because it's going to be on display to the rest of the world. We're not doing that. That just seems like an invasion of privacy. So we're not doing that. And so instead of doing consults, I want to do this Q&A thing because then not only can you post the pictures to the site and actually get good information that way, but then also it doesn't make my time into meetings. Nobody likes meetings. I really like interacting with people, but in terms of setting a meeting up for the middle of my workday, it just doesn't really work for my schedule. And it also will scale my time so that when I do spend time answering questions, it can go out to more people. And that's actually, I've had a slew of people sending me personal Facebook messages, in my personal account, and I typically won't see them because they go into that junk folder, and I just don't check that very often. because the only people I really interact with on Facebook are like friends in real life. And so with that, emailing me for product help through the actual Oh Happy Plants email is the place to go. For any plant questions, I'm doing my absolute best to never answer a plant question in a private sort of atmosphere. So if I answer a plant question, I want it to be available to everyone. So if I go in the member site, I can comment on people's questions, and then anybody who says, oh, I have that issue too, because they see somebody's post, they can read through and they can see whatever comment I've left. Just like this podcast, I'm not putting all this information as a direct email to this one person who has this one issue, because then all of this time will have been spent on one single person. And instead, I can spend all of this time on that one person's issue and make it available to everybody. So I just want to have the biggest impact that I can and help the most people that I can. And by emailing or by posting questions in the member site, you help with that. And also interacting with me in this new format, the Q&As that I'll be doing. And I think I'm going to host some on Facebook too. I'm not sure yet, probably. Or at least I'll post the Q&A that comes from the site over on my Facebook page, because I have a lot of followers on Facebook and I want them to be included as well. And I've invited all of them to the member site, but that it's a lot slower to migrate people to a new platform. Sorry, I have this alarm going off. Okay, I have to go do the thing, and it's sunny outside, so I have to go outside, and I need to go drink water. And I hope you all have a fabulous Monday. It's Monday, right? Yeah. And the skies are blue, and it's gorgeous. And if you need dirt, ohhappyplants.shop is a great place to get it. I don't think I have any promotions on right now, except for there is a promotion that's always on. And sometimes people email me asking if the sale is going away. If you buy 5 quarts or gallons of the dry soils. The dry soil is the only one that's available in gallon size, but the quarts are like the soils, the substrates, any of those things. If you buy 5 or more, you can get 30% off. And this is a thank you to you for trying out like more types of things. Now, if you buy 5 of the same type of soil, it's going to be cheaper to just buy a 2-gallon bag. Then I think it might be a few bucks cheaper, and it's also a full 1 bag more of those generous quart bags. The generous quart bags are they're at least 1 1/4, sometimes 1 1/4. So you'll get more soil if you just buy a 2-gallon bag instead of just buying 5 bags of the tropical climber quarts. Just get the 2-gallon. It's a better deal. Let's see. Housekeeping things. I don't think there are any other things. I hope everybody's gardening, or at least having fun with their plants. Go say hi on Facebook and post comments or something like that. Oh, I've been thinking, one other thing. So if you have never reviewed your items from Oh Happy Plants, I plant a tree for every review. I donate to a charity that plants trees. And so if you want to leave a review for any of your items, I would really appreciate that, number 1. And also there will be a tree planted. So that's pretty cool. Number 2, I've been thinking about doing a giveaway, but, for people who share stuff, product information or unboxing or whatever on Facebook or Instagram. But, I've also been thinking about planting more trees. For anybody who says, hey, I just got dirt from Oh Happy Plants and here's what it looks like, or something like that, and post that on their Facebook wall and tags me, or, tags Oh Happy Plants, I can just make a little tick mark and plant even more trees. So if that sounds fun, let's do it. I really appreciate the social support in terms of getting the word out about the products. Also, shout out to Tonette. I think that's how you pronounce your name. I'm sorry if it's not. Thanks for being a supporter on Patreon too. That just came in today and I really appreciate it. Supporting this podcast is It's just such a labor of love. And like, it's a way that I can, support people in kind, an easier way for me in terms of just like talking into my phone for, it's been almost an hour and a half now, but, it also, like, it costs money and it costs time for me to do. I pay for the platform, I pay for the storage and all of that. And I certainly do a lot of research on this shit. So I really appreciate support with that. And that's just patreon.com/ohhappyplants. I think I've talked enough now. Sorry, I keep going on and on. But it's cozy here and my dog is still asleep, so it's really hard to get up. So anyway, Drumstick says hi. And I'm going to go play with some tomato plants. Have a great day, guys.